Okay, so we're going to start with the leaves, which I am going to ink right now. Just doing the edges real quick. So there's nothing magical to it. I just go around the edges and just give it a little bit of a little variance in the color. It helps make it look a little more natural. Someone on one of the forums told me about these little finger sponges. They work pretty good. They're very comfortable to use. I also like to emboss the leaves just a little bit with an old dried out pen. I'm just going to follow the lines that we drew. It really doesn't add that much, so if you don't do it, don't worry about it. It just is a little bit of extra texture. And one more. We're just going to do one flower in this video. You can make as many as you like. Fill up whatever vase you want to fill up. Alright, so our 3 leaves are now almost ready. We're just going to shape them a little. We'll just curl them this way a bit, and maybe this way. You can curl your leaves different directions. Maybe y'all want it to curve out the entire way. I think that's probably better. So we'll curve from the underside. But at the end, maybe we'll give this one a little bit of a twist up. This one will also curve down. And let's give it a little bit of shape on either side, maybe this side up and this side down just a little bit, just toward the tip. You just want to make it look a little bit more natural. And get rid of this mat here, so our 3 leaves are done, and you can see they're nicely shaped. Okay, so we'll set those aside. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is the center of the flower. Just use a small dowel or a similar round piece of wood, and you just want to curl these up. I'll start with the black one. The black one will be pushed up. I can just shove it between my hand like this and kind of flatten it. I want to hold it together a little bit more. And the yellow one will do the same way, except we're going to push that together even more. Oh, before I push this all the way together, I'm going to give it some seeds in the middle. You can do this however you like. I'm just using a brown Sharpie and tapping on it. I suppose if you wanted to, you could modify your file and have a pen draw that, but this just seemed easier to me to do it this way. And again, I'm just sticking it through a little space in between my thumb and forefinger, index finger. And this one I'm going to try to make a little bit tighter. Okay. but we'll still open it up a bit. We need to be able to get our finger in there because we're now going to glue these two pieces together like that, and that will make the full center of our flower. Get my glue. Doesn't take very much. A few drops. And we'll just stick it right here in the center. I don't usually get to do voice in my videos because there's so much going on in the house, it would get a little bit crazy. Okay, the center of our flower is done. That was pretty easy. Now we're going to work on the petals. Okay, we've got 3 sets of petals. There's small, medium, and large, and one little circle. So let's just separate those out. Here's our medium ones. Our large ones and our small ones. Okay, we're going to start with the small ones, and the process follows the same for all of them. Now, it might be helpful if you have a ball tool like this. These are very helpful because we can work out the sharp spot that gets formed when we form the petal. And there's kind of an edge, it's very angular. And I'd prefer to have it round because nature tends to be a little bit more round. Now to do that, I found that using a small piece of foam core, it's just an old scrap I have, we'll be able to put it on here and use that as a cushion when we use the ball. So for right now, all we need to do is put a small bit of glue right there near where it splits. I'm just going to slide that over, oh, it's probably 1/8 of an inch. It's not critical. And then while you're holding it, just take your ball tool and just smooth it around in there. And that's going to help shape your petal out and make it smooth so there's no angular pieces in it. You don't want to have any sharp corners if you can avoid it. It'll still look fine if you do. Then the last thing we're going to do is shape the flower. And again, if we want to give it a little bit of variance in different spots, just go ahead and curl it up a little bit extra. We're going to repeat that process for each of the 9 petals, but it'll go pretty quickly. Just noticed I didn't cap my ink. I'm going to do that now. Okay, again, just slide it over about 1/16, 1/8 of an inch, somewhere around there. Just going to give it a little bit of shape. And use your ball tool. And finally your dowel. You don't have to do the same thing on each petal. In fact, in some ways, it's probably going to look a little bit better if you give it each of the petals a slightly different shape. It'll keep it more natural looking. Okay, so now we're on our 3rd of the small petals. You can see this goes pretty fast, as long as you've got your tools handy, which most of the time it seems like I don't. I'm always off looking for something. Most often it's a piece of a project that dropped off and fell on the floor somewhere, and I have to spend 10 minutes looking for it, only to discover that it was on my table all along. Okay, we've done the 3 small pieces. We're moving to the medium pieces. Same process. And again, I really do like using this piece of foam core for a cushion. I think it works better than foam. We're always going to curl them in, and then whatever we want to do at the edges is fine. I'll curl both of these out. That was a big one. I guess we'll just do the 3 big ones next. That was one big one. Wasn't paying attention when I grabbed a large one rather than the medium one, but it makes no difference at all. You do these in any order. Unlike a lot of flower projects, these are individual petals. Because they're individual petals, it does take a little bit longer, I just realized I forgot to shape that last petal, so we'll do both of them right now. We'll do this one first. I'll curve that one out. I'll curve this one in. And this one, the one I forgot to do. And they will curve that one in all the way at the top and maybe just a little out here. Try not to crease it if you can. Try to keep it smooth as much as you can. All right, here's our third big one. Again, it doesn't matter what order you do them in. You can do small, medium, large, or small, medium, large, large, medium, small. It doesn't matter. This is really a fairly easy project to do. It goes quickly. We'll do both of those outwards. And now we just have our other two medium ones. To me, the hardest part about doing flowers is not doing the flowers so much as getting them on the stem. But we'll get to that. I'm sure we'll succeed. And the one thing I have learned with flowers is that it doesn't always have to be perfect, because nature isn't perfect. There will always be little differences. In fact, when you make your leaves, I didn't do it, but I might recommend that you make a few of them a little bit smaller and a few a little bit larger, just to give some variation to it. Since this was a brand new project and really the first ones that I'm making, I didn't anticipate the leaf size, so we're going to have all of our leaves the same size. Okay, we've got all our leaves done, so now let's put together our flower. It goes pretty easy. The first thing we're going to do is start with our three smallest petals. What's going to happen is these three petals are going to go at about 1/3 of the way around the circle. We're going to do these on top, and the next two layers will go underneath that circle. So just put a little bit of glue on there. You don't want to glue it down too far, because you want your flower to be able to rise up. Just put a little glue on the underside of the petal. Try to get it as best you can 1/3 of the way or so. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect. Just about 1/3. And finally the last one, again, about 1/3 of the way in. Nobody is going to take a protractor and measure whether you got these perfect or not. Okay, now we've done the first three. These are our small ones. We're going to be building the other ones, the medium ones and the large ones on the back. And they're going to put the medium ones like so. Oops, they're falling apart. But we're going to stagger them, and then the large ones are going to be staggered yet after that. So let's go ahead and put these on. On these, you're going to put the glue on the front edge at the bottom. And again, just kind of put it in about there, turn it over, make sure that you have it nice and centered between those other two flowers, the other two petals, like that. And we're just going to repeat that process for the other two medium flowers. A little glue at the bottom. We'll start here, turn it over just to see where we're at. And also you can push down a little bit harder when it's flipped over like that. That helps glue it down securely. When I do these videos, I have absolutely no idea what is being seen by the camera, so I'm doing my best. But quite honestly, I'm just got my cell phone to take the pictures, so selfies, at least you can see yourself. But I'm using the other end, the camera end. Okay, so we've got these staggered. We've got the medium ones on. Same process. We're going to do the large ones. Put it on. Oops. The reason I don't put the center in before this is that way I can get my fingers down in there and push and get everything fastened down nicely without worrying about messing up the centerpiece. Also, if we don't get it perfectly centered, at least when I get the centerpiece in, that will be centered. I like doing flowers. Flowers are cheerful. And they're actually they're pretty easy to design. Choose a petal shape and then put a bunch of them together. And that's pretty much how nature does it too. Okay, so the main part of our flower is now completed. I'm going to get these, kind of push these up a little bit, make it a little bit tighter for the first two sets. Okay, and now we're going to put our center in the center. I'm sure I don't know, pistils and stamens and I don't know, all the flower parts. I like to look at flowers and not study them so much. Somebody asked me what I wanted to name this flower, and I decided I was going to call it a Dogwood Poppy. Oops, one of these came off. We'll just glue it back on. Probably was a little sparse with the glue when I did it. Okay, I'll have to be a little more careful now. I've got my center in here. Okay. All right, so we are now done with the blossom. So all we really have to do now is put the flower together on the stem, which, as I mentioned, is not my very favorite part, but let's go for it. I usually take a piece of floral tape, a little longer than my stem is going to be. The floral tape does not need to go all the way to the bottom. And I'll pull it out. There's the sticky side. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the leaves on first. A lot of times we put the flower on first and then the leaves, but I find that it's hard to work around the blossom when it's already on. So I prefer to put my leaves on afterwards. So I'll just keep on going around here. The other thing I've experienced with leaves is they tend to break off at the stem where I've got it taped on. I'm not sure what it is that I do that causes that to happen, but sometimes if I'm having enough problems with it, I will use a thin floral wire and reinforce the back of the leaves. These leaves, I think, are thick enough on the stem part not to need it. So I didn't reinforce these. I'm just going to go ahead and put the floral tape right on. I'm hoping all of this stays on the video. I figured 3 leaves per flower, but you can certainly cut more if you like a little bit of extra green when you're doing your arrangements. Sometimes it just depends on how many flowers you're going to have. If you're going to have, a dozen flowers in an arrangement, 3 leaves might be too many. Okay, so we've got our leaves on. Now sometimes blossoms are attached through holes at the top. I didn't do that with these particular flowers because I decided I would rather hot glue them on to a loop at the top of the wire. So what I'm doing is I've got some long nose pliers here. I'm going to turn it over into something of a loop like that. Okay. You can see that. And then I'm going to turn that at a right angle. So that's what we're going to use to glue our flower onto. We're going to just use hot glue. It really won't show. You could use a pistil or a sepal from a different flower if you really wanted to add that. So I'm just putting a glob of glue here, and I'm going to set this right on it, and we'll just hold that there while it cools. I'm sure that the camera probably is getting blocked by all these leaves, but basically I'm just sitting that little loop on the stem into the hot glue that I put on, the glob of hot glue I put on the bottom of the flower. Okay, once that cools enough to set, we should be good to go, and here is our flower, which hopefully you can see nicely. That looks like it'll be just fine, so I'm going to reach over here and put that into our arrangement. I'll work on the height of these flowers afterwards. Alright, so that's how you make a dogwood poppy.